You think church suppers were just fried chicken and potato salad? Think again. Fellowship halls overflowed with dishes so creative they turned Sunday evenings into sacred feasts. Let's dig into 60 church supper dishes from the 1960s and 70s that have disappeared. Baked in aluminum pans that mothers carried from home kitchens to fellowship halls. Sweet potatoes were peeled and sliced thick, layered with brown sugar, butter, cinnamon, and nutmeg before being blanketed with miniature marshmallows that turned golden under heat. The result tasted like comfort itself, with tender yams swimming in caramelized syrup and marshmallows creating a toasted crust children fought over. These appeared at Easter dinners and revival suppers, essential beside ham and greens. Sweet potatoes cost pennies per pound and lasted weeks in pantries, making them economical for feeding crowds. Church mothers competed quietly over whose yams achieved perfect balance, with recipes passed through families and guarded like secrets. The dish represented abundance even during lean times, proving humble ingredients transformed with love could create joy. Gula Red molasses spice cookies filled kitchens with the warm scent of cinnamon, ginger, and cloves long before guests knocked on the door. Dark molasses gave each cookie a deep sweetness and a chewy texture that stayed tender for days, making them ideal for storing in tins or carrying to church gatherings. Butter and brown sugar blended with the spices created a dough that chilled briefly before baking into perfectly cracked tops, dusted with a light coating of sugar. Each bite offered a comforting balance of sweet heat and earthy richness, the kind of flavor that paired perfectly with a glass of milk or a steaming cup of coffee. Children eagerly rolled the dough into small balls while parents handled the hot baking sheets, turning cookie making into a family ritual. Whether stacked on holiday plates or tucked into lunch pails, molasses spice cookies traveled well and satisfied even the strongest sweet craving. They became a year-round favorite for families who cherished recipes that felt both festive and familiar, proving that the simplest ingredients could create an aroma and taste that lingered lovingly in memory long after the last crumb disappeared from the jar. Bones and rice appeared at Black church Christmas dinners as proof that the most flavorful cuts were often the ones others overlooked. Pork neck bones were cheap and considered undesirable by many. But church mothers understood that bones meant marrow, and marrow meant richness. The neck bones were first browned in a heavy pot, then simmered for hours with onions, garlic, and seasoning until the meat fell from the bones and the broth turned silky from rendered collagen. Rice was cooked in that same broth, absorbing every drop of the smoky, porky flavor until each grain glistened with richness. The dish was served in deep bowls, the tender meat piled over rice with plenty of pot liquor for sopping with cornbread. Children learned to navigate around bones, sucking out every bit of marrow and meat their elders had taught them to value. Neck bones and rice represented the ingenuity of Black cooks who turned what others discarded into dishes that satisfied both body and soul during the leanest times. Seven cobbler with pie crust strips was the kind of dessert that reminded people what home felt like. You could smell it before you even made it through the church door, that mix of cinnamon, butter, and baked peaches rising through the air like a sweet hymn. Someone's grandmother had brought it from home, wrapped tight in foil and tucked safely in the trunk of her car, so it would still be warm when service ended. The peaches were always ripe, soft from syrup or from the summer heat, and they melted into the crust like gold under sunlight. The pie strips were laid carefully across the top, never in perfect lines but always with love, brushed with melted butter until they baked into crisp ribbons that cracked softly with every scoop. A bowl of peach cobbler was more than dessert. It was reward for long sermons, for tired weeks, for the kind of patience that came from faith and family. The sweetness clung to your tongue and made every bite feel earned. No matter how many tables were filled with cakes or puddings, this one was always gone first. The elders called it real dessert, and the children licked their spoons clean, knowing this was what happiness tasted like. Wild plum. Chutney stew with vegetables turned what butchers once gave away into luxury dishes saved for special occasions. Oxtails were browned in large pots until caramelized, then simmered for hours with onions, carrots, celery, tomatoes, and herbs until meat became fall-apart tender and bones released gelatin into rich, thick broth. The result was deeply flavorful stew that tasted expensive despite costing almost nothing. Churchwomen understood oxtails required patience and long cooking, teaching younger cooks the value of slow preparation. The bones cost pennies per pound at black-owned butcher shops. The stew stretched small amounts of meat to feed large crowds, with vegetables adding bulk and nutrition, while gelatinous broth created satisfaction. Oxtail stew appeared at anniversary dinners and homecoming celebrations, signaling this was meal worth attending. The dish proved that proper technique could transform what others discarded into something genuinely special. Lemon turkey legs turned ordinary afternoons into feasts that stretched across lawns and porches. Large turkey legs were rubbed with salt, black pepper, and a hint of paprika before spending hours in a slow smoker where hickory or oak wood filled the air with a deep, savory perfume. The meat cooked until it nearly fell from the bone, yet held enough bite to satisfy anyone who grabbed it by the handle and tore off a juicy piece. This portable meal was ideal for church picnics, outdoor fairs, or family reunions where plates were optional and conversation never paused. Children marveled at the size of each leg while adults admired the rich mahogany skin that crackled under gentle pressure. No one left hungry when a basket of smoked turkey legs appeared, and leftovers rarely survived the walk home. Their flavor spoke of patience, resourcefulness, and the simple art of turning inexpensive cuts into something grand, proving that the best meals often needed nothing more than smoke, time, and a crowd ready to gather and share the moment together in the open air. Red velvet cake arrived at Black church Christmas dinners as a towering masterpiece of crimson layers and cream cheese frosting that made everyone pause before the first slice was cut. The cake's deep red color came from cocoa powder reacting with buttermilk and vinegar, though some church mothers added food coloring to achieve the most vibrant shade. The batter was mixed carefully to achieve a texture that was neither too dense nor too light, and the layers were baked in well-greased pans that had seen decades of holiday baking. Cream cheese frosting, tangy and sweet, was spread generously between layers and across the entire cake, sometimes decorated with pecans or coconut flakes. The cake was often displayed prominently on a cake stand, its beauty admired before anyone dared to cut into it. Children stared at the red layers with wonder, and adults remembered their own mothers and grandmothers making this same cake for generations. Red velvet was celebration itself, made visible. Fried peas with ham hocks simmered in church kitchens year-round but held special significance on New Year's Day, when congregations gathered to eat them for luck and prosperity. Dried peas were soaked overnight, then cooked slowly with a single ham hock that released smoky, salty flavor, while onions and garlic added depth. The result was creamy beans in thick pot liquor served as soup or over rice, with ham hock's meat pulled from bone. Churchwomen understood a little meat went far when combined with beans, providing protein without the expense of steaks beyond most budgets. Black-eyed peas cost almost nothing, with dried bags available for pennies, perfect for feeding large crowds after Sunday service. The dish carried deep cultural significance, connecting congregations to Southern agricultural traditions and New Year's customs promising good fortune. Children ate them without complaint because Potlikker's richness made beans taste special, while adults appreciated both nutrition and continuity with tradition. Peach chicken wings with hot sauce were less expensive than whole chickens or breasts, making them practical for feeding church crowds while providing crispy, savory chicken everyone loved. Chicken wings were heavily seasoned with salt, pepper, garlic powder, and paprika before being dredged in seasoned flour and dropped into hot oil that turned skin golden and crunchy. The wings were fried until cooked through and crispy, then tossed with hot sauce while warm so the spicy, vinegary sauce coated every surface. The result was addictive, with crunchy coating giving way to tender meat and tangy heat that made people reach for more. Church fish fries often included chicken wings alongside fish, providing options for those who preferred poultry. Wings cost significantly less per pound than other chicken parts and cooked quickly, making them economical and practical. Hot sauce added minimal expense but transformed plain fried wings into something with personality. Children who couldn't handle heat ate wings without sauce. Lima bean. Homemade blackberry cobbler captured the essence of late summer when berry bushes overflowed and every hand in the household joined in picking. Juicy blackberries were tumbled with sugar and a squeeze of lemon, then poured into a deep baking dish and covered with spoonfuls of biscuit dough. As it baked, the fruit bubbled up around the golden topping, filling the air with a perfume so rich it drifted beyond the kitchen door. The contrast of tart berries and lightly sweet crust made each serving a perfect balance of flavors, especially when crowned with a scoop of vanilla ice cream or a drizzle of cream. Neighbors often traded baskets of berries for a slice of the finished dessert, ensuring that nothing went to waste. Blackberry cobbler was more than a sweet treat. It was a celebration of the season's generosity and the shared labor of harvesting. Every bite carried the warmth of sunlit fields and the satisfaction of turning nature's bounty into something unforgettable that united friends and family around the table. Sweet potato pie held a place of honor at Black church Christmas dinners, and only certain women were trusted to bake it. The pies were never made casually. They represented the signature of the matriarch, a recipe passed down through whispered instructions and watchful eyes in family kitchens. Sweet potatoes were roasted slowly until their sugars concentrated, then mashed smooth and mixed with eggs, evaporated milk, brown sugar, vanilla, cinnamon, and nutmeg. The filling was poured into buttery crusts and baked until the tops turned glossy and slightly cracked at the edges. Unlike pumpkin pie, which dominated white American tables, sweet potato pie carried African American flavor preferences: warmer, spicier, and deeply comforting. The first slice at church dinners always went to the eldest member present, and no one dared ask for seconds until everyone had been served. Sweet potato pie was legacy made edible, carrying stories of grandmothers and great-grandmothers in every bite. Pie with nutmeg was the signature dessert distinguishing African American church suppers, a pie so beloved that families guarded recipes and church mothers competed silently. Sweet potatoes were roasted until tender, then mashed smooth and mixed with eggs, evaporated milk, brown sugar, butter, vanilla, cinnamon, and generous nutmeg that gave filling its distinctive warmth. The mixture was poured into flaky crusts and baked until filling set firm but remained creamy, with tops developing slight sheen. Churchwomen made multiple pies for every supper, knowing sweet potato pie would disappear quickly. Sweet potatoes were inexpensive year-round and stored well in pantries, making them practical for feeding dozens. The pie represented African American culinary tradition at its finest, with roots tracing to West African yam preparations. Children grew up knowing sweet potato pie was superior to pumpkin pie, understanding this was their dessert, their tradition, their taste of home. Cornbread dressing, pumpkin seed. Porridge transformed leftover seeds into a hearty meal that supplied both protein and healthy oils. After pumpkins were cooked for pies or stews, the seeds were washed, dried, and pounded into a coarse meal. This meal was simmered slowly in water or thin milk, creating a creamy porridge with a subtle nutty flavor. Sweetened lightly with honey or molasses when available, it became a sustaining breakfast or evening dish that used every part of the harvest. The method reflected West African culinary traditions where ground seeds thickened soups and stews, showing how transplanted knowledge enriched American foodways. Generations after emancipation, pumpkin seed porridge remained a seasonal specialty in some rural areas, appreciated for its nourishing qualities and gentle taste. Modern cooks might recognize it in contemporary seed-based milks and cereals, proving that this centuries-old practice still influences how we eat today. Ground pumpkin seed. Porridge highlights the wisdom of never wasting what nature provides and celebrates a heritage of careful resourcefulness that continues to inspire. Stewed sweet tea with mint, cooled long afternoons with a gentle sweetness and a refreshing herbal lift. Strong black tea was brewed and sweetened while still hot, so the sugar dissolved completely. Fresh sprigs of garden mint were added as the tea chilled, releasing a fragrance that filled the kitchen. Poured over ice, it offered relief from summer heat and paired perfectly with savory dishes. Families kept pitchers ready in the icebox for guests and children running in from play. Sweet tea with mint became more than a drink. It was a symbol of welcome and shared comfort, a simple pleasure that defined warm Southern hospitality in every cool sip. Hoppin'. John appeared at Black church Christmas dinners as a dish carrying spiritual symbolism and Southern practicality in every spoonful. The combination of black-eyed peas, rice, and smoked pork traced its roots to West African and Gullah food traditions, where rice and beans were dietary staples. Church mothers soaked the peas overnight, then simmered them slowly with onions, garlic, bay leaves, and whatever smoked meat was available until the broth turned rich. The rice was cooked separately and mixed in just before serving, each grain absorbing the smoky, savory liquid. Eating Hoppin' John at Christmas prepared congregations for New Year's Day, when the dish was believed to bring good luck, the peas symbolizing coins and the greens served alongside representing paper money. Leftovers were never wasted, but transformed into Skippin' Jenny, a sign of frugality that was itself considered virtuous. This dish stretched to feed large families and proved that humble ingredients could carry deep cultural meaning. It was quiet in its beauty, but it had a way of humbling every plate beside it. Sweet and custardy, it shimmered when it came out of the oven, golden on top and tender within. It started from simple things: eggs, milk, and corn cut fresh from the cob, but it ended as something sacred. This dish spoke of gardens tended by hand, of rows of corn tall enough to touch the sky, and of cooks who turned harvest into grace. Grandmothers measured nothing, just poured and stirred until the texture felt right, tasting the batter with the edge of a spoon. When it baked, the kitchen filled with the kind of smell that made you stop what you were doing. It was soft and creamy, slightly sweet, with little bits of corn giving it a rhythm all its own. At church dinners, it disappeared quietly, spoon by spoon, without needing praise. It was not fancy, but it was honest, and that made it unforgettable. Every family had their own little trick, a splash of cream here, a dusting of nutmeg there. But no matter how it was made, it always carried the same heart. You could find it on tables beside roast chicken, collard greens, or baked macaroni, holding its own with quiet dignity. It was the kind of dish that reminded everyone that love did not have to shout. Sometimes it simply glowed. Mustard potato salad, cornmeal pancakes for supper were another way families stretched basic ingredients into a filling meal. Flour, cornmeal, lard, and milk came together in a batter that fried into golden cakes on a hot skillet. My grandmother served them stacked, drizzled with syrup if any was available, or eaten plain with butter when syrup was gone. The pancakes were fluffy yet hearty, giving enough energy to hold a family until morning. They cost next to nothing but fed many, which was exactly what mattered most. Children loved the sweetness when syrup was added, while adults appreciated the sheer substance of the cakes. In the 1960s, cornmeal pancakes were a staple when meat was scarce, turning humble ingredients into something warm and reliable. It was comfort food born of necessity, one of those meals that never left memory even as times changed. Homemade cornmeal pancakes carried the spirit of thrift, filling plates with love and survival. Stewed okra with corn, cooked in the style of a classic succotash, filled the kitchen with the colors of summer in just a few minutes. Fresh okra sliced thin joined golden kernels of corn, diced peppers, and sweet onions in a sizzling pan of butter. The vegetables released their juices and mingled into a dish that was both hearty and light. A pinch of salt, a twist of black pepper, and a splash of vinegar brightened the flavors while keeping the natural sweetness intact. This quick stew was a favorite when gardens overflowed and families sought ways to use every harvest. Served alongside cornbread or spooned over rice, it made a complete meal out of what might have been side vegetables. Children enjoyed the tender bites of corn, while elders praised the silky okra for its gentle flavor and rich nutrients. Stewed okra with corn captured the essence of warm days and generous soil in every spoonful. lemon pound pudding with meringue-crowned black church Christmas dessert tables as a towering testament to patience and skill. Unlike modern versions made with instant pudding, church mothers cooked custard slowly on the stove, stirring constantly until it thickened enough to coat a spoon. Vanilla wafers were layered with sliced bananas and warm custard in deep dishes, the cookies softening as they absorbed the creamy filling. The glory was the meringue, egg whites beaten by hand until stiff peaks formed, spread across the top, and browned in a hot oven until golden tips emerged. The contrast of textures, soft custard, tender cookies, creamy bananas, and airy meringue, made every spoonful an experience. Church mothers who mastered the meringue without it weeping were celebrated throughout congregations. Children stared at the golden peaks with wonder, while adults remembered their grandmothers making this same pudding for generations. Banana pudding was love made visible, layered carefully in dishes that told stories. Do you remember the church potluck dishes only your Black grandparents knew? Those meals filled fellowship halls with laughter, gospel, and the smell of love cooked slow and shared wide. What happened to the recipes that once held an entire community together? It was not just dessert, it was testimony. Sweet potato casserole with pecan topping had a way of making its presence known long before you saw it. The smell filled every hallway, the buttery sweetness of roasted potatoes rising through the church basement like a hymn of its own. Every Black grandmother who baked it knew what she was doing. It was a bridge between Sunday service and Sunday joy, between what you gave to God and what you gave to your neighbors. The recipe was never written down, but everyone knew the rhythm by heart. Mash the potatoes until smooth, stir in brown sugar and milk, top with pecans like jewels on a crown. Those nuts toasted golden under the oven's heat while the filling bubbled underneath, silky and rich. Children waited by the kitchen door, sneaking tastes when no one looked, knowing this was the kind of sweetness you could only find in a church kitchen. The casserole dish itself was often chipped and worn, carried from home to potluck year after year like an heirloom that refused to retire. It was made for comfort and company, not for show. And every time it landed on the long wooden tables covered in floral cloth, it said something words could not. That even through hard weeks and heavy hearts, there would always be enough sweetness to go around. Smothered pork chops in gravy represented church supper luxury, transforming inexpensive cuts into something special through slow cooking and proper seasoning. Thick pork chops were seasoned with salt, pepper, garlic powder, and paprika before being dredged in flour and fried until golden, then removed while onions and bell peppers were sautéed in drippings to build gravy's foundation. The chops returned to the pan submerged in rich brown gravy made from pan drippings, broth, and flour, then simmered slowly until meat became tender. Church kitchens filled with the smell during preparation, announcing this would be a special meal worth attending. Pork chops cost less than other cuts and could be purchased from Black-owned butcher shops where families had credit accounts helping stretch budgets. The gravy was the secret, thick and savory with bits of caramelized onion throughout, perfect for spooning over rice or soaking up with cornbread. Fried white angel food cake with fresh berries was the picture of lightness, a dessert that seemed to float off the plate. Egg whites were whipped to soft peaks and folded with sugar and flour until airy and smooth. Baked in a tall pan, the cake cooled upside down to keep its delicate texture. Slices were topped with sugared strawberries or blackberries whose juices trickled into the sponge, creating a sweet contrast to the subtle cake. Families served it for birthdays, weddings, or simply as a bright finish to a hearty Sunday supper. Its gentle sweetness made it a favorite among those who preferred desserts that felt almost weightless. Angel food cake with fresh berries turned a handful of simple ingredients into an elegant treat that captured the taste of celebration and the beauty of seasonal fruit. Potato salad held sacred status at Black church Christmas dinners, and every church mother believed her recipe was the definitive version. The potatoes were boiled until just tender, never mushy, then cubed and mixed while still warm so they would absorb the dressing better. Mayonnaise formed the base, but the additions varied by family tradition. Mustard for tang, sweet pickle relish for brightness, hard-boiled eggs for richness, celery for crunch, and sometimes a touch of sugar to balance the acid. Paprika was sprinkled across the top like a blessing, its red color signaling that this dish had been prepared with care. The salad was made the day before and refrigerated overnight, allowing the flavors to meld into something greater than the sum of their parts. Arguments about the proper texture, creamy versus chunky, divided congregations more than any theological debate. Children would sneak spoonfuls before dinner was served, and adults judged the quality of the entire Christmas spread by the first bite of potato salad. Candied yams were memory disguised as dessert, gleaming under syrup that caught the light like stained glass. They started as humble sweet potatoes, peeled and sliced by hand, then simmered with butter, sugar, and a whisper of cinnamon until they melted into themselves. Every forkful felt like Sunday comfort, the kind that lingered even after the plates were cleared. The smell filled every corner of the church hall, warm and familiar, bringing people back to childhood kitchens. There was something sacred about watching elders spoon them out with quiet pride. This dish did not need decoration. It already carried the glow of love. The yams were passed down like stories, like names, unchanged through generations because nothing about them needed fixing. When people said, "sweet," this is what they meant. The caramel syrup bubbled thick and glossy, coating every piece in warmth, the kind that stuck to memory long after taste faded. Sometimes a sprinkle of nutmeg or clove gave it a deeper note, but never too much. The sweetness spoke for itself. Candied yams did not rush. They took their time, slow and sure, like all things made with patience and heart. On church tables, their color alone brought smiles, that deep orange glow of comfort that meant home had arrived. Sweet potato livers smothered in onions represented economical protein that church kitchens transformed into flavorful dishes through proper preparation. Fresh chicken livers were cleaned and trimmed, then seasoned heavily with salt, pepper, and garlic powder before being dredged in flour and fried until browned. Sliced onions were sautéed in the same pan until soft and sweet, then livers returned to simmer in gravy made from drippings. The result was tender livers in rich onion gravy spooned over rice or served with cornbread. Livers cost almost nothing per pound and provided concentrated nutrition including iron and B vitamins essential for health. Churchwomen understood livers required quick cooking to stay tender, teaching younger cooks proper technique. The dish appeared at Wednesday night suppers when budgets were especially tight, proving organ meats could be delicious when properly prepared. Children who initially resisted learned to appreciate rich flavor, while adults valued both economy and nutrition. Oxtail fried pork tenderloin sliders delivered a satisfying crunch and savory bite in a small but mighty sandwich. Thin slices of pork tenderloin were pounded flat, seasoned, and dredged in a light breading before a quick fry turned them golden and crisp. Nestled into soft rolls and topped with a swipe of mustard or a few pickle chips, these sliders brought big flavor to casual gatherings. They were easy to carry and even easier to eat, making them perfect for fairs, family reunions, or roadside picnics. The contrast between the juicy pork and the fluffy bread created a mouth-watering combination that invited seconds and even thirds. Cooks appreciated how the recipe stretched a single tenderloin into many portions, feeding a crowd without great expense. Fried pork tenderloin sliders showed that the best picnic foods were those that satisfied hunger quickly while still feeling special, a simple pairing of good ingredients prepared with care and enjoyed with laughter under open skies. Fried corn appeared at Black church Christmas dinners as a side dish that elevated simple field corn into something approaching decadence. Fresh corn was cut from the cob, but the real secret was scraping the cobs afterward with a knife to extract the milky, starchy liquid that would thicken the dish naturally. The corn and its milk were fried slowly in bacon drippings with butter, salt, pepper, and sometimes sugar until the mixture became creamy and the natural sugars caramelized. Church mothers stood over skillets, stirring constantly, knowing that a moment's inattention could scorch the corn. The finished fried corn was rich, sweet, and savory all at once. Nothing like boiled corn served at other tables. Though Christmas fell outside fresh corn season, church mothers preserved corn from summer or used canned corn, adapting the technique to whatever was available. Fried corn proved that cooking skill could transform ordinary vegetables into extraordinary dishes worthy of holiday tables. It's the cheapest part of the bird. My grandmother bought them in bulk when she could, piling them into pots with onions, celery, and carrots. Slowly simmered, the wings gave up their fat and flavor, turning thin broth into rich gravy. She thickened it with flour or cornstarch, serving it hot over rice or bread to stretch it even further. It was messy eating, but no one complained because the taste was so comforting. Wings may be prized today, but in the 1960s they were scraps, turned into nourishment by clever hands. She said every part of the bird had value if you treated it with respect. Chicken wing stew carried the spirit of thrift, transforming what others dismissed into something that filled the house with warmth. It was proof that good cooking did not depend on wealth, only patience and care. Corn pudding, bones, and rice transformed what butchers considered scraps into rich, satisfying meals with minimal expense and maximum flavor. Pork neck bones were browned in large pots until caramelized, then simmered for hours with onions, garlic, and bay leaves until meat fell from bone. White rice served as bed for tender meat and thick gravy, providing complete nutrition. Church mothers understood neck bones required patience and proper seasoning, transforming tough cuts through slow cooking. These bones cost almost nothing at Black-owned butcher shops, making them perfect for feeding crowds on limited budgets. The dish appeared at weeknight suppers and revival meetings, where its hearty nature sustained people through hours of worship. Children learned that good food did not require expensive ingredients, just knowledge, time, and care. Neck bones and rice represented resourcefulness, allowing Black communities to thrive despite economic challenges, proving dignity and deliciousness could emerge from what others discarded. But corn pudding was the quiet hero of many potlucks and picnic tables, bringing creamy comfort to every plate. Fresh kernels cut from the cob were mixed with milk, eggs, and a touch of butter, then baked until the custard set into a soft, golden dish that balanced sweet and savory flavors with ease. Some families added a pinch of nutmeg or a scattering of cheese, but the heart of the recipe remained simple and true. Served warm or at room temperature, corn pudding fit as easily beside fried chicken as it did alongside sliced ham or roasted vegetables. Its gentle sweetness appealed to children, while its rich texture satisfied hungry workers who needed fuel for long afternoons. Leftovers rarely lasted beyond the next day, because a cold square of corn pudding tasted just as good as the first serving. This dish reflected the resourcefulness of cooks who could turn a humble pile of ears into a memorable centerpiece that fed a crowd and left everyone grateful for the simple comfort of well-seasoned corn. Molasses stack cake towered on Black church Christmas dessert tables as a monument to community cooperation and Appalachian tradition embraced by Black families. The cake consisted of thin, cookie-like layers spread with spiced apple butter or molasses filling, stacked 6 high until it resembled a sweet mountain. Church mothers contributed individual layers, each baked in their own kitchens, then assembled at the church. The cake was wrapped and left to rest for days, allowing the filling to soften the layers into something approaching spice cake. Molasses provided the distinctive dark sweetness that sugar alone couldn't achieve, connecting the cake to an era when refined sugar was too expensive. Each slice revealed striped layers that told stories of hands that had mixed and baked. Molasses stacked cake was community-made visible, proof that celebration required cooperation. Egg custard pot. Greens with ham hocks were the backbone of every potluck table, steaming and savory, filling the room with their deep, earthy scent. The greens were washed over and over in cool water, not just to clean them, but to honor the work that went into growing them. The ham hocks simmered for hours until the meat softened, sending flavor through every leaf. The pot itself would tremble gently on the stove as if humming along with the gospel songs on the radio. Grandmothers knew the timing by feel, not clocks, tasting the broth and nodding when it was ready. A good pot of greens could stretch a meal, feed a family, and feed a crowd all the same. When carried into the church basement, the steam fogged the lids of the serving trays, and everyone nearby could smell the salt, the smoke, and the love. These greens told stories about sharecropping days, about Sunday rest after long weeks, about making something nourishing from whatever you had. Nothing on that table ever felt more alive. Even if money was tight, you could always count on greens to show up, hearty and humble, served with hot sauce and pride. Baked macaroni cornmeal transformed vegetables that some found slimy into crispy, addictive bites that disappeared from platters immediately. Fresh okra was sliced into rounds, tossed in seasoned cornmeal, creating crunchy coating when fried, then dropped into hot oil until golden and crisp. The result was crunchy outside and tender inside, with frying eliminating okra's natural sliminess while creating something that tasted almost like popcorn. Churchwomen made fried okra during summer when gardens produced abundance, knowing it would be popular with adults and children. Okra was easy to grow and produced prolifically in southern heat, making it economical for feeding crowds. The cornmeal coating cost pennies and transformed the vegetable completely. Fried okra appeared at fish fries and summer suppers, served hot from the fryer and eaten immediately with fingers. Children who claimed to hate okra would devour fried versions, while adults appreciated how proper preparation could make any vegetable delicious. Butterbean and white bean soup simmered slowly until the smoky pork softened every bean into creamy perfection. White beans soaked overnight were cooked with meaty ham hocks, onions, and a few bay leaves until the broth turned rich and hearty. Though it required hours on the stove, the active work was minimal, allowing families to go about their day while the aroma filled the house. This soup was a reliable way to stretch a single ham bone into several meals, providing protein and warmth during cold months. Served with cornbread or over rice, it satisfied hunger and comforted the spirit. Ham hock and white bean soup reflected a time when nothing from the animal was wasted and patience rewarded the cook with deep, smoky flavor. Collard greens with smoked turkey necks simmered for hours in massive pots in church kitchens, filling fellowship halls with an aroma that signaled Christmas had truly arrived. The greens were washed repeatedly, sometimes 7 times or more, because grit had no place at the Lord's table, and church mothers took this duty seriously. Smoked turkey necks replaced traditional ham hocks in many congregations during the 1960s, offering the same depth of smoky, salty flavor without the heaviness of pork fat. The greens cooked low and slow until they turned dark and tender, absorbing every bit of the seasoned broth known affectionately as potlikker. Elders would sip that broth from small cups, claiming it held more healing power than any medicine. Vinegar, hot sauce, and red pepper flakes were added according to family tradition, and each church lady's pot tasted slightly different. Collard greens represented more than vegetables. They symbolized prosperity, and no Christmas plate was complete without a generous serving. Red punch flowed from large glass bowls at every black church Christmas dinner, its bright crimson color signaling celebration before the first sip touched lips. The punch combined fruit juices, ginger ale, and sometimes sherbet into a sweet, fizzy drink that children and adults couldn't resist. Church mothers mixed it in proportions passed down through generations: pineapple for sweetness, cranberry for tartness, soda for sparkle. The red color carried significance, connecting to West African hibiscus drinks and symbolizing joy. Punch bowls were refilled throughout dinner, ladles clinking as cup after cup was poured. Children circled back repeatedly, lips stained red. Red punch represented the communal aspect of church dinners, everyone sharing from the same bowl, connected through the act of drinking together. No Christmas dinner was complete without that bowl of red glowing under fellowship hall lights. Okra beans with fatback simmered for hours in church kitchens, transforming fresh green beans into tender vegetables seasoned with smoky pork. Fresh string beans were snapped by hand, with churchwomen sitting in circles breaking off ends while they talked and laughed together. The beans were added to large pots with chunks of fatback, water, salt, pepper, and sometimes sugar to balance the salt, then cooked slowly until the beans turned soft and fatback rendered into the cooking liquid. The result was beans swimming in rich potlikker that could be sopped up with cornbread, with fatback providing essential flavor and calories. Fatback cost almost nothing at butcher shops and kept well when salted, making it perfect for seasoning vegetables for church crowds. The beans appeared at every summer supper when gardens produced abundance, with families bringing bushels they had grown to be prepared communally. Children grew up loving these beans, understanding that smoky richness came from careful preparation and patience. Cabbage pound cake with vanilla glaze offered a bright twist on a beloved classic that always seemed to lift spirits. Butter and sugar were creamed by hand. Then eggs and fresh lemon zest stirred in to create a fragrant batter. The cake baked to a golden crust while remaining moist and dense inside, ready to soak up the glossy vanilla glaze poured over its warm surface. Families baked it for church socials, Sunday dinners, and neighborhood gatherings where a single slice could sweeten the longest afternoon. The citrusy aroma filled the air, a promise of sunshine even on cloudy days. Served plain or with fresh fruit, each piece carried a balance of tart lemon and smooth vanilla that lingered on the tongue. Lemon pound cake with vanilla glaze proved that simple ingredients, when treated with care, could become a dessert of pure joy and lasting memory. Chow chow relish yams arrived at every black church Christmas dinner in deep ceramic dishes, their surfaces glistening with butter and brown sugar that had caramelized into sticky sweetness. Church mothers sliced thick rounds of sweet potatoes, layered them carefully in baking dishes, and drenched each layer with butter, sugar, cinnamon, and nutmeg before slow baking until the edges turned golden and the centers became soft enough to melt on the tongue. Some cooks added orange juice or vanilla, creating variations that became signature recipes passed through families. The dish connected African American tables to West African traditions, where yams held ceremonial importance, though sweet potatoes had replaced actual yams in Southern cooking. Children fought over the corner pieces where the syrup had thickened into candy-like perfection. Candied yams were never just a side dish at church dinners. They were proof that sweetness and celebration could be created from humble root vegetables dug from southern soil. And tomato stew was the soul of summer on a spoon. The okra simmered down in ripe tomatoes until it turned silky and thick, with peppers and onions joining the mix. It was a dish that knew patience, slow-cooked until every flavor came together like harmony in a choir. The stew was spooned over rice, the juice soaking in just enough to warm you from the inside out. It told the story of fields, faith, and family, of making something rich from what the earth freely gave. Each bowl tasted like history preserved and love made visible. It was the kind of food that drew people close, that made you linger at the table just a little longer. The tang of the tomatoes met the earthiness of the okra, and together they sang of home. A little spice woke it up, but the comfort always remained. Even when the pot was scraped clean, the scent clung to the air, humble, wholesome, and full of grace. Black rice with sausage carried Carolina Low Country traditions into fellowship halls, a dish with roots in West African jollof rice seasoned through generations. Long grain rice was sautéed in bacon drippings with onions, bell peppers, and garlic before crushed tomatoes transformed the mixture into something rich and red, with smoked sausage adding protein. The rice absorbed every bit of flavor as it simmered, turning tender with each grain coated in tomato-rich seasoning. Churchwomen from coastal regions brought this proudly, knowing it represented cultural heritage connecting congregations to ancestors who never forgot their origins. Rice was inexpensive and fed dozens when stretched with vegetables and meat, making it practical for church budgets. The tomatoes added vitamins while sausage provided richness to satisfy working people arriving hungry. Gula red rice appeared at Wednesday suppers and Sunday dinners, signaling someone understood honoring traditions while feeding community. Neckbone collard green wraps with rice and sausage offered a clever way to serve a full meal in one neat package. Fresh collard leaves were blanched quickly until pliable, then filled with a hearty mixture of seasoned rice and smoky sausage crumbles. Rolled tightly and warmed in a covered skillet, the bundles held their shape while the flavors mingled. They traveled well to fields, churchyards, or factory lunches, providing nourishment that stayed warm for hours. The earthy greens balanced the richness of the sausage while the rice stretched the dish to feed many mouths. Families appreciated how easily these wraps transformed garden produce and a small amount of meat into something satisfying and portable. Each bite carried a taste of careful planning and the tradition of making the most of what was on hand. Collard green wraps with rice and sausage became a beloved picnic staple and a reminder that the most practical dishes can also feel like a special treat when wrapped with skill and shared among friends and family under the bright open sky. Brown sugar-glazed ham served as the crowned centerpiece of Black church Christmas dinners, its surface scored into diamond patterns and studded with whole cloves before being brushed repeatedly with a glaze that turned impossibly shiny during roasting. Church deacons often donated the hams, and the preparation was trusted only to women who had mastered the balance of sweet and savory that defined the perfect glaze. Brown sugar, mustard, pineapple juice, and sometimes a splash of Coca-Cola were combined into glazes that caramelized into sticky perfection as the ham slowly roasted. The meat was sliced thin at the serving table, each piece carrying traces of the sweet crust that had formed during hours of basting. Children gathered around, hoping for the crispy edges, while adults savored the smoky, salty meat that anchored the entire Christmas spread. The ham bone was never discarded. It went home with a church mother who would transform it into bean soup or collard green seasoning for New Year's Day. Corn had the power to hush a crowded room. Crumbly, golden, and rich with sage and broth, it was the dish everyone waited for. It started with leftover cornbread, dried and crumbled, then mixed with onions, celery, and whatever broth simmered on the stove that day. The smell rose thick and savory as it baked, the edges crisping just right. It carried the weight of care, a dish that took planning, patience, and heart. At church suppers, people lined up twice just to get another scoop. It was heavy with meaning, like Sunday itself, feeding body and spirit in equal measure. Each bite was tender but bold, soaked through with flavor and memory. The secret was always in the seasoning. Not just sage, but the way it was stirred by someone who knew exactly when it felt right. It was a dish that demanded respect, the kind that made silence fall between bites. Cornbread dressing was not made quickly. It was built layer by layer, like prayer. Even when the pan was scraped clean, the smell lingered, wrapping the room in something that felt a lot like gratitude. Watermelons and rice transformed what butchers considered scraps into rich, satisfying meals with minimal expense and maximum flavor. Pork neck bones were browned in large pots until caramelized, then simmered for hours with onions, garlic, and bay leaves until meat fell from bone. White rice served as bed for tender meat and thick gravy, providing complete nutrition. Church mothers understood neck bones required patience and proper seasoning, transforming tough cuts through slow cooking. These bones cost almost nothing at Black-owned butcher shops, making them perfect for feeding crowds on limited budgets. The dish appeared at weeknight suppers and revival meetings, where its hearty nature sustained people through hours of worship. Children learned that good food did not require expensive ingredients, just knowledge, time, and care. Neck bones and rice represented resourcefulness, allowing Black communities to thrive despite economic challenges, proving dignity and deliciousness could emerge from what others discarded. But brought a burst of tangy excitement to plates that might otherwise taste plain. Cabbage, peppers, onions, and green tomatoes were finely chopped and quickly pickled in a spiced vinegar brine. The mixture brightened everything from beans and greens to hot dogs and pork chops, adding a sweet heat that woke up the palate. Families prepared jars in the late summer so they would have a lively condiment all year, but a small batch could be cooked and cooled in an afternoon for immediate use. Its colorful medley of reds, greens, and yellows made every meal more cheerful. Chow Chow relish embodied the thrift and creativity of cooks who refused to let garden surplus go to waste. A spoonful on the side transformed humble suppers into something memorable, proving that flavor often lives in the smallest details. Ham hock. Cracklin bread arrived at Black church Christmas dinners as cornbread elevated by the addition of crispy pork skin that added richness and crunch to every bite. The cracklings, bits of rendered pork fat and skin fried until golden and crispy, were folded into cornbread batter just before baking, distributing pockets of porky goodness throughout the bread. Church mothers used cracklings saved from hog killing season, stored in lard to keep them fresh until the holidays arrived. The bread baked in cast-iron skillets preheated with bacon grease, creating a crust that shattered when broken. Each piece revealed the treasure within, golden cracklings that had softened slightly during baking, but still provided textural contrast against the tender cornmeal. Cracklin bread was fought over at serving tables, with elders claiming the corner pieces where extra cracklings had settled. This bread represented the resourcefulness of black cooks, who turned byproducts of butchering into something that made ordinary cornbread extraordinary. Salad appeared at every church supper in large bowls, its bright yellow color from prepared mustard distinguishing it from mayonnaise versions and giving it tangy sharpness that cut through rich meats. Potatoes were boiled until tender, then cooled and diced before being mixed with chopped onions, celery, hard-boiled eggs, sweet pickle relish, mayonnaise, and generous squirts of yellow mustard. The result was creamy and tangy with textural variety from crunchy vegetables and creamy potatoes, served cold during long gatherings. Church women made potato salad in enormous quantities, knowing it was essential accompaniment to fried fish, barbecue, or any main dish needing starchy, cool contrast. Potatoes were among cheapest vegetables available year-round, with 10-pound bags costing less than $1. The mustard added minimal cost but maximum flavor. Families developed strong preferences for their church's version. Which black church Christmas food would you bring back to the table? Drop your memories in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe so we can keep serving up these forgotten flavors together. Buttermilk cornbread from scratch emerged from church ovens in cast-iron skillets seasoned through decades, creating golden rounds with crispy bottoms and tender crumbs that soaked up Potlikker perfectly. Stone-ground cornmeal was mixed with buttermilk, eggs, flour, baking powder, and salt before being poured into smoking hot skillets greased with bacon drippings that created the signature crust. The result tasted nothing like store-bought varieties, with slight tang from buttermilk and richness from drippings. Church women competed quietly over whose cornbread achieved perfect texture, not too dry and not too cake-like, but substantial enough to fill stomachs and complement every dish. Cornmeal was among the cheapest staples available, with 5-pound bags costing less than $1. The bread appeared at every gathering, from Wednesday fellowship to all-day singing, where stacks disappeared as quickly as they were baked. Children reached for corner pieces with extra crust, while adults appreciated how the bread stretched meals. Black-eyed apple stack cake was the showpiece of gatherings where family recipes meant more than any store-bought dessert. Thin layers of spiced cake were carefully baked and cooled, each one brushed with a generous spread of slow-cooked apple preserves until the stack rose high and fragrant. As the cake rested overnight, the fruit soaked into the tender layers, turning every slice into a soft, moist bite that tasted of cinnamon and orchard air. Neighbors often contributed their own preserves when apples were plentiful, making this dessert a true community effort. The scent of simmering apples and warm spices lingered in the kitchen long after the oven cooled, drawing children to peek under tea towels for an early taste. Served with a simple dusting of powdered sugar or a spoonful of whipped cream, the cake carried the memory of autumn harvests and long tables filled with kin. Apple stack cake proved that patience and shared work could create a dessert far richer than the sum of its humble parts, and every family swore their version was the best, passing the tradition down like a treasured heirloom from one generation to the next. Smothered chicken graced black church Christmas tables as a dish that transformed yard birds into something approaching luxury through patience and cast-iron skill. Whole chickens were cut into pieces, seasoned with salt, pepper, and paprika, then dredged in flour and fried until golden in skillets that had seasoned flavors baked into their surfaces from decades of use. The magic happened next. The chicken was returned to the skillet with sautéed onions covered with broth and simmered slowly until the meat became fall-apart tender. The gravy that formed was rich and golden, thickened naturally by the flour coating and rendered chicken fat. Church mothers who mastered smothered chicken were celebrated throughout congregations, their dishes emptying before others on the serving line. Served over rice or alongside cornbread for sopping, this dish proved that Southern cooking was about transformation, taking simple ingredients and elevating them through time and love into something unforgettable. Gumbo with fresh crab told the story of low-country waters and West African roots in every bowl. Thickened by the natural mucilage of okra and deepened with a slow-simmered stock, the stew held blue crab, onions, bell peppers, and fragrant spices that reflected both coastal bounty and ancestral memory. Fishermen brought the catch of the day to markets where cooks bargained for the sweetest crab meat, while home gardeners plucked tender okra pods from vines that thrived in humid summers. The gumbo pot became a gathering place where family and neighbors stood around sharing stories as the aroma of seafood and spice filled the air. Served over rice, each spoonful carried the taste of tides, soil, and a heritage that stretched back across the Atlantic. In modern times, many turned to faster recipes and frozen ingredients, losing the patient layering of flavor that once defined this dish. Yet for those who remember, nothing matches the soulful depth of a true okra gumbo made with freshly caught crab. Pie with nutmeg was the signature dessert distinguishing African-American church suppers, a pie so beloved that families guarded recipes and church mothers competed silently. Sweet potatoes were roasted until tender, then mashed smooth and mixed with eggs, evaporated milk, brown sugar, butter, vanilla, cinnamon, and generous nutmeg that gave filling its distinctive warmth. The mixture was poured into flaky crusts and baked until filling set firm but remained creamy, with tops developing slight sheen. Church women made multiple pies for every supper, knowing sweet potato pie would disappear quickly. Sweet potatoes were inexpensive year-round and stored well in pantries, making them practical for feeding dozens. The pie represented African-American culinary tradition at its finest, with roots tracing to West African yam preparations. Children grew up knowing sweet potato pie was superior to pumpkin pie, understanding this was their dessert, their tradition, their taste of home. Smothered sweet pickle spears offered a crisp, bright counterpoint to heavy meats and rich casseroles. Fresh cucumbers were sliced into long spears and packed into jars with a brine of vinegar, sugar, dill, and warm spices. After a quick rest in the refrigerator, the pickles developed a perfect balance of sweetness and tang. Served alongside sandwiches, fried chicken, or straight from the jar, they added a refreshing crunch that cut through hearty flavors. Families loved making these pickles at home because the recipe required little equipment and rewarded even beginner cooks with reliable results. A jar of sweet pickle spears in the icebox promised an easy snack for children and a lively garnish for adult plates. Their bright flavor reminded everyone that even the simplest garden harvest could be transformed into something memorable. Sweet pickle spears were more than a condiment. They were a reminder of thrift, tradition, and the small pleasures that turn everyday meals into moments of shared delight and lasting comfort. Okra fritters turned smothered oxtails graced black church Christmas tables as a dish that transformed what others considered waste into rich, luxurious stew that rivaled any expensive roast. The oxtails were first seared until deeply browned, then braised slowly in a base of onions, garlic, tomato paste, and beef broth seasoned with thyme, bay leaves, and sometimes allspice. The meat cooked for hours until it fell from the bones and the marrow melted into the sauce, creating a gravy so rich it could be eaten with a spoon. Church mothers who specialized in oxtails were celebrated throughout congregations, their pots emptying faster than any others on the serving line. The dish was served over rice that soaked up every drop of the dark, savory gravy. Oxtails required patience and skill. There were no shortcuts to the falling apart tenderness that defined the dish. What the world threw away, black cooks elevated into something unforgettable, proving that love and time could transform anything into a feast. And rind stew reflects the creativity and endurance of people forced to survive on the edges of the plantation food system. The sweet red fruit was usually reserved for those in the owner's household, but the pale green rind, often thrown away, became a valuable ingredient for the enslaved cooks who transformed scraps into nourishment. Strips of rind were simmered slowly with onions, garden herbs, and whatever seasoning could be gathered or traded, creating a mellow broth rich in minerals and gentle sweetness. This practice traveled forward in time, inspiring the pickled watermelon rind that remains a hallmark of Southern home kitchens today. The dish is more than a recipe. It is a record of resilience, showing how African culinary knowledge turned waste into sustenance and flavor. In modern celebrations of African American foodways, watermelon rind pickles and stews continue to honor those who preserved health and dignity through skilled cooking even when denied basic freedom. Buttermilk corn nuts in salt water were Southern tradition that appeared at outdoor church events, with steaming pots of soft, salty peanuts eaten while people socialized. Raw peanuts in shells were boiled for hours in heavily salted water until shells softened and peanuts became tender and briny. The result was unlike roasted peanuts completely, with soft texture and salty flavor that made them addictive. Churchmen often took charge of boiling peanuts for picnics and outdoor gatherings, standing over propane burners and testing batches until they reached perfect tenderness. Peanuts were inexpensive Southern crop that many families grew in gardens. The boiling process was simple but required patience and attention. Boiled peanuts were eaten warm, with people cracking shells and sucking out soft nuts before discarding shells. The snack represented regional food culture specific to the South, connecting church communities to agricultural heritage. Nuts in salt water were Southern tradition that appeared at outdoor church events, with steaming pots of soft, salty peanuts eaten while people socialized. Raw peanuts in shells were boiled for hours in heavily salted water until shells softened and peanuts became tender and briny. The result was unlike roasted peanuts completely, with soft texture and salty flavor that made them addictive. Churchmen often took charge of boiling peanuts for picnics and outdoor gatherings, standing over propane burners and testing batches until they reached perfect tenderness. Peanuts were inexpensive Southern crop that many families grew in gardens. The boiling process was simple but required patience and attention. Boiled peanuts were eaten warm, with people cracking shells and sucking out soft nuts before discarding shells. The snack represented regional food culture specific to the South, connecting church communities to agricultural heritage. Chess squares, often called butter bars, were the kind of sweet that disappeared from a platter before anyone finished setting the table. A simple crust of flour, butter, and sugar was pressed into a pan, then topped with a rich mixture of cream cheese, eggs, and more butter whipped with sugar until silky. Baked until golden, the top formed a delicate, crackly crust that gave way to a gooey center so sweet it almost demanded a second helping. These squares were easy to slice into tidy portions, perfect for school bake sales, Sunday socials, or a quick treat after dinner. Their buttery aroma filled the house and signaled comfort to everyone who walked through the door. Even after cooling, the bars held their soft texture, making them ideal for carrying to picnics or potlucks. Chess squares reminded families that a few everyday ingredients could produce something decadent, and their enduring popularity spoke to the simple joy of sharing a dessert that felt both homemade and just a little bit indulgent at the same time. Fried catfish appeared at Black church Christmas dinners as a beloved tradition that united entire congregations around fellowship tables. The fish were often caught by church members themselves from local rivers and ponds, cleaned carefully and soaked in buttermilk to remove any muddy taste. Fillets were dredged in seasoned cornmeal mixed with cayenne, garlic powder, and paprika, then fried in hot peanut oil until the exterior turned golden and crispy, while the flesh inside stayed white and flaky. The smell of frying catfish drew families from across the church grounds, and the sound of sizzling oil became the soundtrack of Christmas celebration. Served with hot sauce, always Louisiana or Crystal Brand, and slices of white bread for sopping, fried catfish transformed a simple fish into a feast. Leftovers were eaten cold the next day between bread slices, extending the joy of fellowship beyond the dinner itself. This dish proved that abundance could come from rivers and creeks when grocery money was scarce. Peach cobbler with hand-rolled crust arrived at church suppers in rectangular pans, golden pastry bubbling with fruit juices that caramelized at edges while centers stayed tender. Fresh peaches were sliced during summer when abundant and cheap, tossed with sugar, cinnamon, nutmeg, and lemon juice before being covered with pastry dough rolled thin. The cobbler baked slowly until crust turned golden and peach filling thickened into syrup pooling in corners, creating bites ranging from crispy edges to fruit-soaked centers. Churchwomen made these in home kitchens early Sunday morning, timing baking so dessert was slightly warm when served. Peaches in season cost little at roadside stands, with bruised fruit perfect since it would be cooked down anyway. The dish represented summer abundance and preserving seasonal fruit, with families often canning peaches for year-round cobblers. Children lined up eagerly, hoping for corner pieces with extra crust, while adults savored the combination that tasted like celebration. Sweet potato pie brought a gentle tang and custardy sweetness to tables where dessert had to stretch for a crowd. The filling came together with little more than fresh buttermilk, sugar, butter, and eggs, whisked until smooth and poured into a flaky crust rolled thin for economy. As it baked, the top formed a delicate golden layer that cracked softly beneath a knife, revealing a creamy center that held the perfect balance of sweet and tart. Families prized it for reliability, since even novice bakers could count on its silky texture and bright flavor. Served chilled on hot evenings or slightly warm beside a cup of coffee, each slice carried the quiet richness of country kitchens and long summer nights. It was a dessert that required no adornment, though a dusting of nutmeg or a dollop of whipped cream turned it into something fit for special occasions. Buttermilk pie proved that a few common ingredients, handled with care, could create a lasting memory at church suppers, reunion feasts, or simple family dinners where love mattered more than fuss. Its smooth custard and subtle tang reminded everyone that comfort often comes from the most unassuming recipes handed down through patient hands. Lemon ice pickled pig's feet sat in large glass jars at black church Christmas dinners, their gelatinous texture and tangy flavor dividing congregations into devoted fans and firm avoiders. The feet were cleaned meticulously, boiled until tender, then packed into jars with hot vinegar brine seasoned with bay leaves, peppercorns, and red pepper flakes. Church mothers who mastered pickling were celebrated for transforming what others discarded into a delicacy that kept for months without refrigeration. The meat was eaten cold, pulled from the bone with fingers that got sticky from the natural gelatin. Children watched with fascination as elders savored these strange-looking treats, the vinegar's sharpness cutting through the rich, porky flavor. Pickled pig's feet represented the waste-nothing philosophy of Black Southern cooking. At Christmas dinners, the jars were placed alongside crackers and hot sauce, offering a taste of tradition for those who remembered when such preserved meats meant survival. Hog peas with ham hocks simmered in church kitchens year-round but held special significance on New Year's Day, when congregations gathered to eat them for luck and prosperity. Dried peas were soaked overnight, then cooked slowly with a single ham hock that released smoky, salty flavor, while onions and garlic added depth. The result was creamy beans in thick pot liquor served as soup or over rice, with ham hock's meat pulled from bone. Churchwomen understood a little meat went far when combined with beans, providing protein without the expense of steaks beyond most budgets. Black-eyed peas cost almost nothing, with dried bags available for pennies, perfect for feeding large crowds after Sunday service. The dish carried deep cultural significance, connecting congregations to Southern agricultural traditions and New Year's customs promising good fortune. Children ate them without complaint because Potlikker's richness made beans taste special, while adults appreciated both nutrition and continuity with tradition. Tomato sandwiches with Duke's mayonnaise celebrated the peak of summer when garden tomatoes were at their sweetest. Thick slices of perfectly ripe tomatoes were layered between soft white bread that had been spread generously with creamy Duke's mayonnaise and sprinkled with a pinch of salt and black pepper. The juice of the tomatoes soaked slightly into the bread, creating a sandwich that was both refreshing and rich. No cooking was required, only the patience to let the tomatoes shine. These sandwiches became a midday ritual for many families, a taste of sunshine captured between two slices of bread. They embodied the philosophy that the freshest ingredients need the lightest touch, turning a handful of pantry staples into a meal that rivaled any elaborate dish. Tomato sandwiches with Duke's mayonnaise were proof that simplicity often delivers the deepest satisfaction, bringing people back to the table again and again whenever tomato season rolled around. Chow Chow relish appeared in mason jars at every Black church Christmas dinner, its tangy sweet crunch providing the perfect counterpoint to rich meats and heavy sides. This pickled relish combined green tomatoes, cabbage, onions, and peppers with vinegar and sugar, creating a condiment that church mothers had canned during late summer for holiday tables. The preparation required patience. Vegetables were chopped fine, salted overnight, then cooked with spices until the kitchen filled with sharp, vinegary steam. Each family's recipe varied, some adding mustard seed, others preferring heat from cayenne. Chow Chow was spooned over black-eyed peas, layered onto ham sandwiches, and eaten straight from the jar by those who couldn't wait. The relish represented the Southern tradition of putting up food, preserving summer's bounty for winter celebration. No church Christmas spread was complete without at least 3 jars of homemade Chow Chow, their contents glowing amber and green through the glass. Picking fish brought coastal traditions inland to fellowship halls, providing affordable protein that could feed large crowds without expensive fish like snapper. Whole whiting were cleaned and scaled, then scored on both sides before being heavily seasoned with salt, pepper, cayenne, and garlic powder. The fish were dredged in seasoned cornmeal, creating crunchy golden coating when dropped into hot oil, with flesh inside staying white, flaky, and tender, while exterior turned crisp. Church fish fries became community events where men gathered around outdoor fryers while women prepared sides, with smell drawing neighbors from blocks away. Whiting was among cheapest fish available, with whole fish costing just pennies per pound and small bones that could be eaten when properly fried. The fish provided complete protein and essential fatty acids, making them nutritious choices that satisfied appetites. Children learned to navigate small bones expertly, picking meat clean and leaving behind perfect skeletons. Mustard potato salad. Caramel layer cake stood tall and proud on tables set for celebrations big and small. Soft layers of yellow sponge were stacked high, each one brushed with a warm, buttery caramel icing that dripped slowly down the sides. Making the icing demanded patience as sugar and cream simmered until rich and golden, filling the kitchen with a deep sweetness that promised something special. Once cooled just enough to pour, the caramel coated every layer with a glossy sheen, creating a dessert as beautiful as it was indulgent. Slices revealed tender cake balanced by the dense, almost candy-like frosting that clung to each forkful. Families reserved this cake for birthdays, anniversaries, and church homecomings where a grand finale was required. Guests often whispered about who made the best caramel, debating the merits of darker or lighter shades while savoring every bite. Caramel layer cake was more than dessert. It was a symbol of celebration and the careful attention that turned simple pantry staples into a masterpiece of texture and taste, destined to be remembered long after the party ended. I graced Black church Christmas dessert tables as a simple creation, proving elegance needed nothing more than eggs, milk, sugar, and vanilla combined with skill. The custard was mixed gently, poured into unbaked pie shells, and baked slowly until the filling set with the slightest wobble. Church mothers who mastered egg custard pie were celebrated for achieving the silky texture that separated perfect custard from rubbery failure. Nutmeg was grated fresh across the top, its speckled pattern signaling care. The flavor was pure and comforting, not too sweet, not too rich, but balanced. Children often requested egg custard pie over fancier desserts because its familiar taste felt like home. The pie represented the beauty of restraint, proving that simple ingredients handled with care could satisfy as deeply as any elaborate confection. Hot water appeared at every church supper in large bowls, its bright yellow color from prepared mustard distinguishing it from mayonnaise versions and giving it tangy sharpness that cut through rich meats. Potatoes were boiled until tender, then cooled and diced before being mixed with chopped onions, celery, hard-boiled eggs, sweet pickle relish, mayonnaise, and generous squirts of yellow mustard. The result was creamy and tangy with textural variety from crunchy vegetables and creamy potatoes, served cold during long gatherings. Churchwomen made potato salad in enormous quantities, knowing it was essential accompaniment to fried fish, barbecue, or any main dish needing starchy, cool contrast. Potatoes were among cheapest vegetables available year-round, with 10-pound bags costing less than $1. The mustard added minimal cost but maximum flavor. Families developed strong preferences for their church's version. Peach upside-down cake was a bright showstopper that turned an everyday fruit into something worthy of applause. Thick peach slices were arranged in the bottom of a buttered pan, coated with brown sugar that melted into a caramel glaze as the cake baked. A moist yellow batter was poured on top and baked until golden. Then the whole pan was flipped to reveal a glistening crown of fruit. The aroma of peaches and caramelized sugar filled the kitchen, tempting anyone nearby to sneak a taste before it cooled. Served slightly warm, each slice combined tender cake with juicy peaches in a blend of flavors that felt like summer on a plate. This dessert made the most of both fresh and canned fruit, ensuring it could appear on the table any time of year. Peach upside-down cake proved that a little drama at dessert time required nothing more than a careful flip and the patience to let sweet simplicity shine brightly. Cornbread dressing was sacred at Black church Christmas dinners, prepared according to recipes that church mothers guarded more closely than family secrets. The base was always cornbread, made from scratch days earlier and left to dry slightly, crumbled into large bowls and mixed with sautéed celery, onions, and sometimes bell peppers. Chicken broth was added by feel rather than measurement, and sage gave the dressing its distinctive earthy flavor. Some church ladies added boiled eggs or giblets, while others insisted on keeping the recipe pure. The mixture was poured into deep baking dishes and baked until the top turned golden and slightly crispy, while the center remained moist and savory. This was never called stuffing, that was for northern tables. Cornbread dressing stood on its own as a separate dish worthy of its own serving spoon and generous portions. The aroma of sage and onions baking filled fellowship halls with warmth, and the dressing disappeared faster than almost anything else on the table. Pork chops were Sunday strength on a plate. Thick cuts of pork cooked slow in onion gravy until every bite fell apart at the touch of a fork. The grandmothers who made them did not rush anything, because flavor took time and love took patience. They browned the chops in cast-iron skillets that had seen decades of dinners, letting the sizzle mark the start of the feast. Then came the onions, sliced thin, fried golden, and stirred with broth and flour until the whole kitchen smelled like home. Those pans were never washed too hard, because that seasoning was history. By the time the chops were done, the gravy had turned deep and glossy, clinging to rice, biscuits, or whatever was served beside it. Folks lined up early at the church table for this dish, knowing it would be gone before the choir even finished their song. It was not fancy food, it was memory food, the kind that reminded you who raised you and how much care could live inside one skillet. Even now, if you ever smell that rich gravy cooking, it feels like stepping back into a kitchen where laughter and faith never ran out. Collard stewed with ham filled fellowship halls with its distinctive aroma, transforming inexpensive vegetables into something hearty through slow cooking with pork. Cabbage heads were quartered and added to large pots with ham hocks, onions, garlic, black pepper, and sometimes vinegar that brightened the flavors. The cabbage cooked down until tender, absorbing smoky richness from ham while the ham became fall-apart tender. The result was soft cabbage and flavorful broth that people ate with spoons, sopping up liquid with cornbread and picking meat from ham hocks. Cabbage was among cheapest vegetables available year-round, with heads costing pennies and lasting weeks in storage. The dish stretched small amounts of meat to feed large crowds, with ham hocks providing enough flavor to make cabbage taste rich. Church women made enormous pots that sat on stoves for hours, filling buildings with smells announcing supper. The cabbage represented practical cooking that honored tradition while feeding communities affordably. Corn pudding box pie offered cool relief on the warmest afternoons when ovens worked overtime and the air shimmered with heat. Freshly squeezed lemon juice was blended with sweetened condensed milk and egg yolks to create a filling that set without long baking, its tartness bright enough to make mouths water with the first glance. A graham cracker crust provided a gentle crunch while a pillow of whipped cream softened each bite. The pie rested in a portable ice chest or family refrigerator until perfectly chilled, making it a dependable treat for picnics, fish fries, or church socials. Its cheerful yellow hue seemed to capture sunshine in a slice, and the flavor balanced sweet creaminess with lively citrus so well that second helpings were inevitable. Cooks valued the recipe for its simplicity, since it could be prepared early in the day and forgotten until serving time, leaving hours free for visiting neighbors or tending gardens. Lemon icebox pie carried the taste of summer long after the season passed, proving that with a few bright ingredients and a bit of patience, a dessert could deliver both refreshment and pure joy even when the temperature climbed high above comfort. Giblet gravy poured over everything at Black church Christmas dinners, its rich brown color and complex flavor elevating even the simplest dishes into something special. The gravy began with the giblets, heart, liver, and gizzard, simmered in broth with onions, celery, and bay leaves until tender enough to chop fine. The cooking liquid became the base, thickened with a roux of flour and pan drippings from whatever meat had been roasted that day. Church mothers stirred constantly to prevent lumps, adjusting seasoning with salt, pepper, and sometimes a splash of Worcestershire sauce for depth. The chopped giblets were stirred back in, adding texture and concentrated flavor to every ladleful. This gravy tied the entire Christmas plate together, poured over cornbread dressing, rice, and sliced turkey or ham alike. Nothing was wasted in its making, and nothing on the plate was considered complete without it. Giblet gravy represented the philosophy of Black Southern cooking. Use everything, waste nothing, and make it delicious. Neckbone bread baked in cast iron anchored countless suppers with its golden crust and tangy bite. The heavy skillet, seasoned from years of use, gave the bread a flavor impossible to match in a modern pan. Families stirred cornmeal with fresh buttermilk, a little lard, and a pinch of salt, then listened for the satisfying hiss as the batter hit hot iron. The result was a loaf both crisp at the edges and tender inside, perfect for soaking up potlikker from simmered greens or for eating plain with a drizzle of cane syrup. Grandmothers often taught their grandchildren to test the heat of the skillet by flicking in a few drops of water, a small ritual that connected generations. On Sundays after church, the scent of baking cornbread drifted through neighborhoods, promising a meal that united family and friends. Today, prepackaged mixes and quick breads have replaced the slow, careful method that once defined African American kitchens, and the art of true cast-iron cornbread grows rarer with each passing year. Chicken wing stew was one of those meals that would surprise modern ears, since wings were once pudding with vanilla sauce transformed leftover bread into beloved dessert that appeared regularly, proving resourcefulness could create something delicious from what might be wasted. Day-old bread was torn into chunks and soaked in mixture of eggs, milk, sugar, vanilla, cinnamon, and sometimes raisins before being baked until golden and set. The result was custardy inside with slightly crisp top, served warm with vanilla sauce made from butter, sugar, flour, milk, and pure vanilla poured over each portion. Church women saved bread ends and slightly stale slices throughout the week, knowing bread pudding would be needed for upcoming suppers. The dessert cost almost nothing since bread was abundant and eggs and milk were pantry staples, perfect for feeding crowds. The vanilla sauce transformed humble pudding into something that felt indulgent, with sweetness and richness satisfying dessert cravings. Children asked for second helpings, while adults appreciated practicality of turning leftovers into celebration. Fried chicken turned simple garden harvests into irresistible bite-sized treats that vanished as soon as they reached the table. Fresh okra pods were chopped fine, mixed with cornmeal, a splash of buttermilk, and just enough seasoning to wake up every taste bud. A hot skillet of shimmering oil transformed each spoonful of batter into golden patties with crisp edges and tender centers, the okra lending a subtle grassy sweetness that kept everyone reaching for more. Families loved them for their speed as much as their flavor, since they could go from cutting board to plate in minutes, perfect for unexpected company or late afternoon hunger. Children helped stir the batter while older relatives worked the stove, turning the cooking process into a communal rhythm that carried on from one generation to the next. Served plain or with a quick drizzle of cane syrup, these fritters paired effortlessly with anything from fried fish to a simple bowl of beans. The scent of frying cornmeal filled kitchens and backyards alike, promising comfort with every sizzle. Even today, the memory of that first crunchy bite lingers, a reminder of how ingenuity and fresh ingredients could turn the humblest vegetables into something to celebrate with every neighbor and friend. Buttermilk pound cake stood tall on black church Christmas dessert tables, its dense golden crumb and subtle citrus flavor making it one of the most beloved cakes of the era. The secret ingredient, a full bottle of lemon-lime soda, gave the cake a tender texture and light sweetness that distinguished it from traditional pound cakes. Church mothers creamed butter and sugar until fluffy, added eggs one at a time, then alternated flour with the fizzy soda until the batter reached perfect consistency. The cake baked slowly in a tube pan until a toothpick came out clean and the top turned golden brown. Some versions were glazed with a mixture of powdered sugar and lemon juice, while others were served plain, their simplicity their greatest virtue. 7-Up pound cake traveled well, sliced easily, and kept for days. All practical considerations for church dinners where food had to feed crowds. The cake represented mid-century ingenuity, using a commercial product to achieve results that felt homemade and special. Banana pine needle tea offered a bright and restorative drink when fresh produce was scarce during cold months. Enslaved foragers collected the youngest green needles from longleaf and loblolly pines, rinsed them carefully, and steeped them in hot water until the brew released a light citrus aroma. Rich in vitamin C, this tea helped ward off scurvy and brought a welcome freshness to winter diets heavy with salt-preserved foods. The practice echoed both indigenous traditions and West African herbal knowledge, merging two continents' wisdom into a single sustaining cup. Families continued to brew pine needle tea well after emancipation, and it remains popular among modern herbalists for its gentle flavor and reputed immune-boosting qualities. Its evergreen scent and warm golden color remind us that even in the most barren season, the forest offered nourishment. Pine needle tea illustrates how observing the land and respecting its cycles allowed people to find both medicine and comfort, turning what others overlooked into a sustaining daily ritual that strengthened body and spirit alike. Ham bone, shrimp, and grits embodied the spirit of low-country cooking, while adapting easily for large gatherings where generous helpings were a must. Fresh shrimp, quickly sautéed with onions, garlic, and a hint of smoky seasoning, released a savory aroma that filled the room with anticipation. Meanwhile, stone-ground grits simmered until creamy, enriched with butter and a splash of cream for extra indulgence. When the shrimp were spooned over the grits, their juices mingled to create a sauce that needed no extra flourish. This dish traveled from humble coastal kitchens to church picnics and neighborhood fish fries, becoming a centerpiece of community meals that celebrated both land and sea. Cooks appreciated how quickly it came together while still tasting luxurious, proof that fine flavor did not require hours of labor. Guests lined up eagerly, balancing paper plates piled high with shrimp and grits that warmed hearts as much as stomachs. Each serving told a story of resourcefulness and coastal heritage, carrying the briny scent of the ocean and the comforting texture of slow-cooked grain, uniting families and friends around the enduring pleasure of a perfectly prepared Southern classic shared in the open air. Chess pie arrived at Black church Christmas dinners as a simple custard pie that proved dessert magic could come from pantry staples alone. The filling required only butter, sugar, eggs, cornmeal, and a splash of vinegar or buttermilk for tang, ingredients every household already had on hand. Church mothers mixed these simple components into a batter that baked into a dense, sweet filling with a slightly caramelized top and a texture somewhere between custard and candy. The cornmeal gave it a subtle grittiness that distinguished it from other custard pies, while the acid balanced the sweetness perfectly. Chess pie was often called the poor man's pie because it needed no expensive fruit or nuts, yet it satisfied sweet cravings completely. The origin of its name remained mysterious. Some claimed it came from cheese pie mispronounced, others from chest pie because it kept well in pie chests. Whatever the name's origin, chess pie represented the genius of making abundance from scarcity. John was the heartbeat of New Year's morning and every day that needed a little hope. Black-eyed peas simmered with rice, and a hint of smoked meat turned into more than just a meal. It became a blessing. Grandparents swore by it, saying a bowl on the first day of the year would bring luck, health, and enough to last. The peas symbolized coins, the rice meant abundance, and every spoonful felt like a promise whispered between generations. You could smell the onions frying before the pot even started, the kind of smell that felt like homecoming. This dish came out of history, from the low-country kitchens of the South, and found its way into hearts across America. Even when times were thin, Hoppin' John stayed thick, filling bellies and spirits alike. It wasn't a rich person's dish. It was the people's dish, one that carried laughter, prayer, and endurance in equal measure. Today, even if you only make it once a year, you can feel that same wish for good fortune echo through every bite. Stewed chicken with dumplings created a meal that wrapped everyone in warmth from the first spoonful. Tender chicken simmered slowly with onions, celery, and fragrant herbs until the broth turned rich and flavorful. Soft dough was dropped gently into the bubbling pot, forming dumplings that puffed up as they absorbed the savory liquid. The aroma drew families to the kitchen long before it was ready, promising a dinner that satisfied both hunger and heart. Each bowl offered a balance of tender meat, delicate dumplings, and a broth so comforting it seemed to cure the chill of any season. This dish became the centerpiece of countless Sunday dinners and winter gatherings where conversation stretched late into the evening. Leftovers, if any remained, tasted even better the next day after the flavors melded. Stewed chicken with dumplings reminded everyone that patience and simple ingredients could create a feast of love and nourishment, carrying on a tradition of hearty home cooking that made even the coldest night feel warm and full of family connection. Rutabagas mashed with butter appeared at black church Christmas dinners as a humble root vegetable transformed into something elegant through patient cooking and generous seasoning. The large purple-topped roots were peeled, cubed, and boiled until tender enough to mash smooth, then whipped with butter, salt, pepper, and sometimes brown sugar to balance their earthiness. Church mothers who grew rutabagas considered them essential winter fare, hearty vegetables that stored well and provided nourishment when little else was available. The mashed rutabagas were served alongside candied yams and collard greens, their pale yellow color providing contrast on plates dominated by darker dishes. Children often approached them with suspicion, but those who tasted them discovered a flavor both sweet and savory that complemented holiday meats perfectly. Rutabagas represented the practical wisdom of Southern cooking, growing what thrived in poor soil and transforming it into something worth celebrating. Black offered a burst of tart sweetness when sugar was scarce and fruit trees grew untended along plantation edges. Gatherers picked the small, deeply colored plums at peak ripeness and simmered them slowly with a little honey or molasses when available, along with wild herbs for spice. The result was a tangy preserve that enlivened cornbread, salted meats, or simple porridge, providing vitamins and variety in otherwise plain meals. This method of combining fruit with savory seasonings echoed West African chutneys and relishes, demonstrating a culinary bridge between continents. After freedom, African-American home cooks continued to prize wild plums for jellies and sauces, and many Southern families still make small-batch plum preserves each summer. The enduring appeal of wild plum chutney lies in its ability to turn overlooked fruit into a bright condiment that brightens any table. It stands as a flavorful link between survival cooking and the rich tapestry of modern Southern preserves that celebrate both heritage and the gifts of the wild landscape. Okra gum casserole arrived at church suppers in deep baking dishes, its golden top slightly browned and custard-like interior, sweet from fresh corn enriched with eggs and milk. Fresh corn kernels were cut from cobs and mixed with eggs, evaporated milk, butter, sugar, flour, and sometimes nutmeg before being poured into buttered dishes and baked slowly. The result was somewhere between pudding and cornbread, with tender corn suspended in creamy custard that held together when spooned. Churchwomen made corn pudding during summer when corn was abundant and cheap, often receiving bags from families with garden surplus. The dish stretched corn into something substantial that could serve as both vegetable and starch, filling stomachs efficiently. Children loved corn pudding because it tasted slightly sweet, while adults appreciated how it used seasonal abundance while creating something celebratory. Corn pudding proved that church cooks understood transforming simple ingredients into dishes, satisfying both hunger and soul. Bread pudding. Roasted peanuts in paper bags offered a simple yet unforgettable snack that pleased every generation. Raw peanuts were spread on large baking sheets, lightly salted, and roasted until their shells turned crisp and aromatic. Packed warm into small paper bags, they released a nutty perfume that drew children and adults alike to the vendor's side or the church picnic table. The sound of shells cracking and the feel of warm peanuts in hand added to the charm, making the experience as delightful as the taste itself. Inexpensive and easy to prepare in large batches, roasted peanuts became a staple at outdoor revivals, street fairs, and baseball games where a quick, satisfying bite was all anyone needed. Sharing a bag encouraged conversation and laughter, each handful a tiny celebration of togetherness. They represented the beauty of straightforward food that required no elaborate recipe to create lasting joy. Roasted peanuts in paper bags reminded communities that sometimes the best treats were also the most humble, their salty warmth etching a simple memory of comfort and fellowship into every gathering that lasted well beyond the final cracked shell. Maw, stuffed with sausage and vegetables, appeared at Black church Christmas dinners as a dish that showcased the ingenuity of turning humble ingredients into celebration food. The pig's stomach was cleaned thoroughly, a process that took hours and required strong hands and patience, then stuffed with a mixture of seasoned sausage, potatoes, cabbage, and onions before being slow roasted until the casing turned crispy and the filling became tender. Church mothers who prepared hog maw were respected for their skill and dedication as the dish demanded attention from start to finish. The sliced portions revealed layers of meat, vegetables, and savory juices that had melded during hours of cooking. Though not everyone appreciated the texture, those who grew up eating hog maw considered it essential holiday fare. The dish represented the tradition of using every part of the hog that sustained Black families through generations of hardship. At Christmas, hog maw carried both practical nourishment and cultural memory in every slice. Beans with butter and bacon transformed what some children considered boring vegetables into something rich through proper seasoning and pork. Dried lima beans were soaked overnight, then cooked slowly with bacon pieces, onions, garlic, and bay leaves until beans became creamy and tender. Butter was stirred in at the end, adding richness and glossy finish. The result was substantial enough to serve as main dish or hearty side, with bacon providing smoky depth and butter adding luxurious mouthfeel. Lima beans were inexpensive, with dried bags costing pennies and yielding enormous quantities when cooked. The beans provided complete protein when combined with cornbread, making them nutritionally valuable and economical. Church women made large pots that fed dozens, knowing beans would be popular with both adults and children who appreciated bacon flavor. The dish appeared regularly at Wednesday suppers, proving simple ingredients properly prepared could create something genuinely beloved. Homemade raspberry sherbet punch turned every church basement or backyard into a celebration the moment the first ladle was poured. Tart raspberry sherbet floated in a sparkling mix of ginger ale and chilled fruit juice, creating a frothy pink cloud that delighted children and adults alike. The punch bowl became the gathering point at weddings, baby showers, and revival socials, where guests returned again and again for another scoop of icy sweetness. Bright citrus slices added cheerful color while a subtle fizz tickled the tongue, making each sip refreshing and fun. Cooks loved how effortlessly it came together, needing only a few ingredients and a steady hand with the ladle. The gentle sweetness cooled warm afternoons and balanced the richer flavors of picnic spreads. Homemade raspberry sherbet punch embodied the joy of community and the magic of simple hospitality, proving that a shared drink could transform ordinary moments into cherished memories that lasted long after the final cup was drained and the laughter faded into the summer night. Drop your tastiest pick in the comments, hit like if your mouth is watering, and subscribe to keep these throwback bites sizzling on our channel. Ambrosia salad appeared at Black church Christmas dinners in large glass bowls, its layers of fruit, coconut, and marshmallows visible through the sides like edible stained glass. The dish combined canned mandarin oranges, pineapple chunks, maraschino cherries, shredded coconut, miniature marshmallows, and sour cream into a sweet mixture that served as both salad and dessert. Church mothers assembled it the night before, allowing the flavors to meld and the marshmallows to soften in the refrigerator. Children considered it pure heaven, piling their plates high with the sweet fruit and fluffy marshmallows. The name itself, ambrosia, food of the gods, suggested the dish's special status at holiday gatherings. Some versions included pecans for crunch, while others kept strictly to fruit and cream. Ambrosia represented the abundance of Christmas celebration, a dish that could only be justified during holidays when sweetness was meant to overflow. Its pastel colors brightened buffet tables and brought smiles before the first bite. Greens with potlikker simmered for hours in church kitchens, filling buildings with their distinctive aroma signaling traditional Southern cooking. Fresh turnip greens were washed multiple times to remove grit, then added to large pots with ham hocks, onions, garlic, vinegar, sugar, and red pepper flakes that balanced the greens' natural bitterness. The greens cooked down until tender and dark, releasing juices into cooking liquid that became rich pot liquor. The pot liquor was the treasure, thick with vitamins and flavor, often drunk from cups or sopped with cornbread. Churchwomen understood greens required proper seasoning and long cooking to transform them from tough leaves into tender vegetables. Turnip greens cost almost nothing, often donated by families. The dish connected congregations to agricultural traditions and represented cooking that sustained families through lean times while providing nutrition. Children learned to appreciate greens early, understanding they were non-negotiable parts of supper plates. Hot water cornbread turned a handful of pantry staples into golden rounds of pure comfort. Cornmeal was scalded with boiling water and mixed with a pinch of salt, then shaped into patties and slipped into a hot skillet. The edges crisped within minutes while the center stayed soft and tender. This quick bread accompanied everything from greens to fried fish, absorbing gravies and sauces like a sponge. Families relied on it when time was short and hunger was high because it could be ready before the rest of the meal left the stove. Hot water cornbread proved that speed and thrift could still yield flavor worth remembering, a humble recipe passed through generations as both a side and a snack. Peach cobbler arrived at Black church Christmas dinners bubbling hot in cast-iron pans, its golden crust giving way to sweet fruit that had caramelized around the edges. Though peaches were summer fruit, church mothers preserved them in jars or used canned peaches during winter months, ensuring this beloved dessert could grace holiday tables year-round. The crust was more rustic than pie, sometimes spooned over like dumplings, other times rolled into golden perfection, seasoned with cinnamon, nutmeg, and lemon juice to brighten the sweetness. The cobbler would hiss as it cooled, the sound announcing something wonderful awaited. Served hot with vanilla ice cream or just a splash of cold cream, peach cobbler was ceremonial food made for Sunday dinners and Christmas celebrations. The corner pieces, always a little more crust, always claimed by the eldest at the table, were fought over quietly. For many, the memory of that golden crust and syrupy filling lives longer than any recipe card ever could. Chest pie with cornmeal was Southern dessert tradition that appeared regularly at church suppers, its simple ingredients transforming into something rich and sweet. Eggs, sugar, butter, cornmeal, vinegar, and vanilla were whisked together and poured into unbaked pie crusts, then baked slowly until filling set firm with slightly caramelized top. The cornmeal gave the pie subtle texture and nutty flavor that distinguished it from plain custard pies, while vinegar added brightness, balancing sweetness. The result was dense and sweet with slight graininess that made each bite interesting, served at room temperature in thin slices. Chess pie required only pantry staples that most families already had, making it economical for church desserts, feeding dozens. Churchwomen competed quietly over whose chess pie achieved perfect balance of sweetness and texture. The pie represented cooking that made much from little, proving sophistication did not require expensive ingredients or complex techniques. Salmon pineapple sheet cake brought a tropical brightness to gatherings where variety was key and servings had to be generous. Crushed pineapple folded into the batter kept the cake moist while lending a sunny sweetness that contrasted beautifully with the tang of cream cheese frosting spread thick across the top. The sheet pan format made slicing easy, ensuring that no one went without a piece when the crowd pressed in for dessert. A sprinkle of chopped pecans added gentle crunch, while the aroma of baked pineapple filled the kitchen with a hint of island air. This cake became a favorite for reunions and church suppers, loved for its ability to stay tender even when baked a day ahead. Families treasured how it combined simple ingredients into a dessert that tasted far more luxurious than its humble preparation suggested. Pineapple sheet cake proved that a single pan and a well-worn recipe card could produce a treat bright enough to make any occasion feel like a celebration of sunshine and shared happiness. Black-eyed pea fritters appeared at Black church Christmas dinners as crispy appetizers that turned leftover peas into something new. The peas were mashed and mixed with flour, egg, onion, and spices, then dropped by spoonfuls into hot oil where they puffed into golden rounds. Church mothers made these fritters to stretch ingredients and provide finger food for children who couldn't wait. The exterior shattered with each bite, revealing soft, savory centers flavored with garlic and cayenne. These fritters traced their roots to West African akara, connecting African-American tables to ancestral traditions that survived the Middle Passage. Served hot with hot sauce for dipping, the fritters disappeared quickly. They represented the creativity of Black cooks who transformed any ingredient into something worth eating. At Christmas, black-eyed pea fritters offered a preview of New Year's luck. Croquettes with crackers transformed canned salmon into elegant finger foods that appeared at church receptions where something slightly fancy was needed. Canned salmon was drained and flaked, then mixed with crushed crackers, eggs, onions, and seasonings, before being formed into small patties and pan-fried until golden. The result was crispy on the outside and tender inside, with salmon flavor coming through clearly. The croquettes were served on platters with saltine crackers for guests to make into small sandwiches, creating bite-sized treats that felt special. Canned salmon was affordable protein that did not require refrigeration before opening, making it practical for church kitchens. The dish stretched small amounts of salmon to serve large crowds, with each can yielding dozens of small croquettes. Churchwomen made these for afternoon receptions, following weddings and funerals, knowing they represented hospitality and care. The croquettes proved church cooks could create refined food from humble ingredients. Chicken cornbread appeared at Black church Christmas dinners as small fried cakes perfect for sopping up potlikker and gravy. The batter was made by pouring boiling water over cornmeal with salt, creating a paste shaped by hand into small oval patties. These were fried in hot oil until the exteriors turned golden, while the insides stayed dense and chewy. Church mothers stood over skillets frying batch after batch, the smell filling fellowship halls with warmth. Hot water cornbread was meant to be eaten immediately, passed in napkin-lined baskets while still crackling from the fryer. Unlike baked cornbread, these fried cakes offered textural contrast. Crunchy outside, soft inside. Irresistible for dragging through greens or beans. The technique required no fancy ingredients, just cornmeal, water, and skill. Pound cake arrived at church suppers on cake plates, its dense golden crumb topped with lemon glaze that dripped down sides and hardened into sweet coating. Butter, sugar, eggs, flour, and fresh lemon juice and zest were beaten together until smooth, then baked slowly in loaf pans until cakes set firm. The glaze was made from powdered sugar and lemon juice whisked together and poured over warm cakes so it soaked in while creating a shiny finish. The result was rich and buttery with bright lemon flavor cutting through sweetness, served in thick slices. Churchwomen made pound cakes for special occasions, knowing dense cakes could feed many people from single loaves. The cakes kept well for days, actually improving as flavors melted together. Lemons added minimal cost, but transformed plain and dumplings were a comfort for the congregation, a stew that could stretch to feed however many people showed up. The broth simmered slow, thick with flour and flavor, while soft dumplings puffed up on top like little clouds. Every spoonful was a reminder that simplicity could still taste divine. It was always served from a big enamel pot, the kind that never stayed empty long. The chicken was tender, the dumplings tenderer, and the warmth endless. Grandmothers stood near the stove ladling out bowls with quiet smiles saying, "There's more in the back." It was food that didn't run out, not when love was cooking it. The broth was rich with time and care, deepened by whatever herbs grew in the yard or window box. The dumplings soaked up everything, fluffy yet hearty, made to satisfy both hunger and heartache. You could taste the faith in every bite, the belief that food, like kindness, multiplies when shared. On cold days, this dish healed. On good days, it celebrated. Either way, it fed more than just the body. It fed the soul. Head biscuits with honey butter were named for their generous size, each one as large as a cat's head and just as soft. Cooks mixed flour, lard, and fresh milk into a quick dough, handling it gently so the biscuits baked up tall and fluffy. Hot from the oven, they split open in steamy clouds, ready to receive a lavish smear of honey butter that melted into every crevice. Families treasured this breakfast treat for its simplicity and its ability to feed many with little effort. The sweet scent of warm honey drifted through kitchens, coaxing even the sleepiest children to the table. Served with sliced ham, fried apples, or simply on their own, Cathhead biscuits carried the taste of country comfort. They symbolized abundance during lean times because a single biscuit felt like a whole meal. In every bite was the memory of early mornings and careful hands turning humble pantry staples into a bread worthy of celebration. For New Year's represented cultural tradition and superstition, with black-eyed peas and rice eaten on January 1st, promising prosperity and good luck. Black-eyed peas were cooked with rice, ham hock, onions, and seasonings until peas became creamy and rice absorbed all flavorful cooking liquid. The dish was served at watch night services and New Year's Day dinners, where congregations gathered to eat together and pray for blessings. Church elders taught younger generations that eating Hoppin' John on New Year's was essential tradition connecting them to ancestors. The peas symbolized coins, while greens served alongside represented paper money. Black-eyed peas and rice cost almost nothing, making them accessible to every family regardless of economic circumstances. The tradition united communities across class lines, with wealthy and poor alike participating. Hoppin' John proved that church food traditions carried meaning beyond mere sustenance, connecting people to heritage while feeding hope for better times ahead. Fried okra in dressing had the power to hush a crowded room. Crumbly, golden, and rich with sage and broth, it was the dish everyone waited for. It started with leftover cornbread, dried and crumbled, then mixed with onions, celery, and whatever broth simmered on the stove that day. The smell rose thick and savory as it baked, the edges crisping just right. It carried the weight of care, a dish that took planning, patience, and heart. At church suppers, people lined up twice just to get another scoop. It was heavy with meaning, like Sunday itself, feeding body and spirit in equal measure. Each bite was tender but bold, soaked through with flavor and memory. The secret was always in the seasoning. Not just sage, but the way it was stirred by someone who knew exactly when it felt right. It was a dish that demanded respect, the kind that made silence fall between bites. Cornbread dressing was not made quickly. It was built layer by layer, like prayer. Even when the pan was scraped clean, the smell lingered, wrapping the room in something that felt a lot like gratitude. Chicken pudding with vanilla wafers and meringue was the signature dessert that distinguished Southern church suppers, with layers creating something that felt both nostalgic and celebratory. Vanilla custard was cooked on stovetops until thick, then layered with vanilla wafers and sliced bananas before being topped with meringue made from egg whites beaten until stiff with sugar. The meringue was spread thick and swirled into peaks that browned under the broiler, creating golden tops people fought over. The dessert was served cold, with cookies softened by custard while maintaining slight crunch. Church women made banana pudding for every significant gathering, knowing it would disappear quickly. Bananas were inexpensive and available year-round, while vanilla wafers came in affordable boxes. The meringue stretched eggs further while creating impressive presentation. Banana pudding represented the kind of dessert that made church suppers special, proving simple ingredients combined properly could create something genuinely memorable. Hoppin' John and cheese was the crown jewel of every church supper, golden and bubbling beneath its crust. The noodles were cooked just enough, layered with sharp cheddar and evaporated milk in heavy pans that once belonged to someone's mother. No one used measurements, just instinct, passed down through taste and touch. When that oven door opened, the smell alone made people drift toward the kitchen. The cheese melted into a silky river, clinging to each noodle until it became more than a side dish. It was family history disguised as comfort food. Kids hovered close with their plates, hoping to get the corner pieces where the cheese crisped just right. Grandmothers guarded their recipes but always shared a serving, smiling at the next generation and saying, "Now this is how it's supposed to taste." On potluck Sundays, the pan came back scraped clean, proof that love and patience never wasted. It was food that reminded people of who they were and why the best things in life take a little time to bake. Fried oxtails with rice gravy brought deep flavor and slow-cooked richness to Sunday tables across many African American communities. Oxtails, once inexpensive and overlooked, were browned in heavy pots and then simmered for hours with onions, garlic, and spices until the meat turned buttery soft. The braising liquid thickened into a silky gravy that clung to each grain of rice, creating a dish that was equal parts comfort and celebration. Families saved this meal for weekends when everyone could gather because patience was essential and conversation flowed while the pot worked its magic. Children sneaked tastes from wooden spoons, drawn by the savory aroma that filled the house from morning until evening. The humble tale, once discarded by butchers, became a centerpiece of pride and ingenuity. Today, rising prices and faster cooking habits mean fewer people take the time to coax such tenderness from a simple cut of beef, but those who remember the meal speak of it as a perfect union of thrift, skill, and the slow rhythm of family life. Homemade whiting fish was the heartbeat of summer services and Sunday fundraisers, popping and hissing in cast-iron skillets behind the church. The fish was dredged in seasoned cornmeal, fried until golden and crisp, the edges curling slightly as they hit the hot oil. The sound alone could bring a crowd. Children ran back and forth with paper plates while elders fanned themselves with church programs, laughing and waiting for the next batch. You could taste the salt of the sea, the crunch of tradition, the work of hands that knew how to stretch a meal. Fried whiting was affordable, filling, and familiar, something every soul food cook could trust to come out right. Sometimes it was served with white bread and mustard, sometimes with coleslaw and hush puppies, but always with pride. It was food that traveled well, from kitchen to fellowship hall to picnic table, and it never lost its magic. Every piece was a little miracle of patience and grease, the taste of good company and good faith. Berry cobbler from wild berries represented summer's abundance and the tradition of foraging that connected church communities to the land. Children and adults picked wild blackberries from brambles along fence lines, returning with stained fingers and buckets full of fruit. The berries were tossed with sugar and lemon juice, then covered with pastry dough and baked until fruit bubbled. The result was tart and sweet simultaneously, with wild berries providing more intense flavor than cultivated varieties. Church women made blackberry cobbler during brief summer season when berries ripened. The berries cost nothing since they grew wild, making cobbler affordable despite seeming luxurious. The dessert appeared at summer revivals and vacation Bible school celebrations, served warm with ice cream when available. Blackberry cobbler connected people to seasonal rhythms, and reminded them that life's sweetest pleasures came from nature rather than stores. String bean casserole with bacon and onions was the kind of dish that looked simple but carried weight. Fresh beans were snapped by hand, tossed into pans with crisp bacon and caramelized onions until the whole kitchen smelled alive. The recipe came before shortcuts, before cans and mixes, when people built flavor from scratch. That first bite was smoky, soft, and sweet. A hymn sung through taste. On church Sundays, this dish always disappeared first. The bowl went around once, twice, and came back empty, a quiet testament to good hands and good memories. The bacon fat gave the beans their soul, coating them in flavor that whispered of long days in the kitchen and even longer days in the fields. A little sugar balanced the salt, a trick passed down by women who knew that even vegetables deserved indulgence. It was a dish that spoke softly but stayed with you, proof that the simplest foods could feel the richest. Okra pumpkin seed. Porridge transformed leftover seeds into a hearty meal that supplied both protein and healthy oils. After pumpkins were cooked for pies or stews, the seeds were washed, dried, and pounded into a coarse meal. This meal was simmered slowly in water or thin milk, creating a creamy porridge with a subtle nutty flavor. Sweetened lightly with honey or molasses when available, it became a sustaining breakfast or evening dish that used every part of the harvest. The method reflected West African culinary traditions where ground seeds thickened soups and stews, showing how transplanted knowledge enriched American foodways. Generations after emancipation, pumpkin seed porridge remained a seasonal specialty in some rural areas, appreciated for its nourishing qualities and gentle taste. Modern cooks might recognize it in contemporary seed-based milks and cereals, proving that this centuries-old practice still influences how we eat today. Ground pumpkin seed. Porridge highlights the wisdom of never wasting what nature provides and celebrates a heritage of careful resourcefulness that continues to inspire. Stewed. Which forgotten church supper dish would you bring back to the fellowship hall? Share your memories in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe so we can keep these blessed traditions alive together.